Tibani. I'm a talent officer at Psybergate, and I'll be your moderator for today as we wait for Marielle to work on the presentation. She will be introducing our panelists. Marielle, I think we can actually continue without the presentation. It's okay. You can read it through, and I will be sure to we'll be sure to have our panelists open their cameras as well. With that being said, I'd like to take you through a couple of items and reminders for today's discussion. Throughout the event, you will be able to submit questions for panelists, and if you would like to address specific panelists, please indicate who your question is for. Kindly note that some of our panelists might leave early, and if you have any question that is specific to that particular panelist, we'll be sure to keep you in touch with everyone else. And you should be able to submit your questions through the chat box on Teams, and we'll have the last 10 minutes to look at as many questions as we can. So to introduce some of our panelists, may you please take over?
100%. Hi, everyone. My name is Marielle, and I'm the chairperson for Engineers Without Borders. And I'd just like to say thank you all for joining us today. We are so excited to be talking to you guys and giving you some more insights into this amazing field that is software development. So with us today, we have Psybergate, and they are actually a company that specializes in software development and in consulting. And yeah, we have some panelists from their team, and they're going to answer a bunch of questions that you guys have submitted. And another thing that I wanted to mention that I'm sure you guys are actually all really, really excited for are the VAC work opportunities and the Young Developers Program that Psybergate offers to students. So we'll have Chris chatting to us a little bit later about that. Yeah, again, apologies for the slide. I'm not sure why it's not showing up. Hopefully we can get it up later. All right, without further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists that we'll be having with us today. So starting off, we have Chris Naidu, and he is the technical director for Psybergate. His qualifications are quite extensive. He has a BSc in aeronautical engineering, a BSc in computer science, a BCom in accounting, and he is also an Oracle certified Java programmer. So Chris is really passionate about investing his time and effort into upskilling and uplifting the youth in South Africa through his expertise in IT. And as I mentioned, he does this by running an intense mentoring session with the graduates through the Psybergate Graduate Mentoring Program. He's really passionate about teaching all the skills that developers need to grow and learn so that they too can add value in their lives and to society. Next, we have Gina Murray. She's a Java developer, and Gina's background is in computer science, and she works very closely with developers who come from engineering. She assists Chris in mentoring developers and is always there to assist developers along their journey, which I'm sure, as many of our panelists will attest to, is quite something. Next, we have Ridwan Omar. He is a Java developer, and he has a Master of Science in Engineering, mechanical engineering specifically. His life quote is, "There is no wealth like knowledge and no poverty like ignorance." And he's very passionate about learning how the world works, analysis, and dissemination of knowledge. Next, we have Fetolo Makobele. She is a Java developer. I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure, and has a qualification and a Bachelor of Science in Engineering, specifically electrical engineering. I hope you guys are taking notes from of all of these disciplines so that you can ask questions specifically relating later on. Their life quote is, "Life is going to happen with or without you. You may as well just live it however you want." And they're passionate about automotive engineering, especially fast cars. We love that. Next, we have Clinton Mahano. Their current role is in Java development, and he has a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. His life quote is, "There's always another way," and he's very passionate about gaming. He's currently playing on PC, and Tekken 7 is one of his favorites. So panelists and participants, I hope you're taking note. Next, we have Suhail Musa, who is an intern and was part of the 2021 graduate program at Psybergate. His highest qualification is a Master's of Science in Chemical Engineering, and his life quote is, "Life works out." I must say, I quite agree with that one. His passion is gaming with friends. I see we have quite a few gamers over here. Participants, are you also quite interested in that? Let us know in the chat box. Next, we have Lechlochonolo Mahau. The current role is also as an intern. They were also part of the 2021 graduate program. Their highest qualification is in mechanical engineering. They have a Bachelor of Mechanical Engineering, and the life quote is, "Everything takes longer than you think it will." I can say I quite agree with that one. It does definitely take longer than you think it will. Be conservative when you're planning your things out. And their passion is learning new things. Last but not least, we have Ashraf Omar. He is a current Java developer at Psybergate. His highest qualification is a Bachelor of Electrical Engineering, and his life quote is, "Persistence will get you further than talent ever can." Yes, definitely that 80-20 rule. And his passion is helping people. At Engineers Without Borders, I can definitely say that we agree with that one. All right, so you guys... Thanks, Duduzile. You guys asked a bunch of questions and we listened, and I'm just going to hand over to Duduzile now so that she can take you through all of the questions and ask the panelists these questions. Cool, Duduzile, take it over.
Thank you so much, Mariel. So what we did, we received a lot of questions. Thank you so much for the questions that you guys actually sent through. What we did was to restructure some of the questions that we thought were similar to each other, and we'll try by all means to address each and every question. So this is how everything will go. We'll be addressing questions on engineering and software development, and then address questions on vacation work. And lastly, we'll be addressing questions on the YDP and the grad program. If you have any follow-up questions, please be free to use the chat box down below. And I'm pretty sure, guys, since we've been here, you're probably wondering who Psybergate is, what Psybergate is about. I mean, you might have went to our website, but then we are honored to have Chris Naidu, our technical director, joining us today. So Chris, may you please tell us who you are, what is your engineering background, and how did you get into software development?
Yes, thanks, Duru, and thank you guys for for hosting us. I guess for, I don't know, how long is this meant to be, Duru? 2 hours, hour and a half.
2 hours.
2 hours. Okay, so yeah,
Yes.
as I said, thanks, and yeah, it'd be great just to spend this time with you guys, and hopefully, answer your questions and learn something about you. Do I need to turn cameras on? I don't know if my camera works, but I'll turn it. I'll try.
Okay.
Just can you see me?
We can see you.
Okay, yeah. So unfortunately, it's my side camera. My main camera isn't working. So I just thought I'd turn it on. Sorry, what was the question? Did you just repeat?
May you please tell us who you are, Chris? We know that you're Chris, but please tell us more about yourself and tell us about your engineering background and how you actually got into software development.
Okay, so yeah, guys, as Dudu said, Chris Naidu. So I'm the technical director at Psybergate. So in terms of engineering background, that's an interesting one. So my degrees in my engineering degree is aeronautical engineering, and back, I mean, I'm got many years in IT, so this is a while back that I got my degree from Wits. In fact, Wits was the only university that offered an undergrad aeronautical engineering degree during my time. There was no other university that offered an aero degree undergrad. I think Stellenbosch offered a postgrad. And during my engineering, most of you will know, because I guess everyone here is an engineer, you do some programming, and it was no different in those days. I did some programming, and I couldn't believe how passionate or how much the sort of the art of programming just got my heart beating. To cut a long story short, I decided to complete my degree and then continue with a BSc in computer science. And applied maths at Wits too. So I formally studied computer science as well, which I think many engineers don't end up doing, and to some degree that that may or may not, depending on who you are, be a disadvantage if you didn't manage to do some of this formally. All right, so to cut long story short, and maybe I can just go into telling you how we started Psybergate.
Yes, please.
Can I do that, Dudu? Is that all right?
Yes, please.
Okay. So had roughly 12 years of work experience, I think, roughly. And then in 99, myself and my partner, Faisal, we decided to start this company called Psybergate. And so this year is, I think, the beginning of our 23rd year, if my maths is right. Yeah, so very much just passionate about software, wanting to build software. And so that was the basis on which we started the business. We didn't hire young people at the beginning, even though we were involved with universities. The volume of people involved would have been a lot lower. Hopefully, you can work out starting a business is not easy. So you can't. I mean, people are the most expensive part of that. So we couldn't afford to just hire people. The owners of the business did most of the work. But then we started experimenting with various things, including mentoring people, and we started hiring young people in 2013. And that's when it was the beginning of our journey into hiring a lot more graduates. And, some of that has culminated in where we are here today.
Okay. So, Chris, you spoke about hiring graduates, right? May you please tell us how big is the gap between where graduates are and what the industry is looking for in general?
Yeah, so I think some of that answer is probably not as easy. I guess some of it is based on what your expectations are in your career. So the industry, I mean, there's quite a big gap between where you come out of university and if you really want to be a capable software developer. That's going to be a lot harder to achieve just based on what we see happening. So in other words, you come out of varsity, hopefully you're lucky enough to get a job. That in itself is difficult because many companies are looking for guys with a level of experience. And so that doesn't materialize for most companies. Most graduates don't satisfy that. And when they do get it, then often the graduate isn't really growing as well as he thinks it is. So that's the hard part, is that you're going to struggle to actually figure out for yourself how well you're growing. So the gap is large, but it's going to be even larger if you truly want to be a strong senior guy. Then the gap's even going to be larger.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chris. As of now, we'll be asking some of the questions that you guys asked. At Gina, what programming languages are you guys currently using in software development?
So this is very much dependent from project to project. So like Dudu mentioned earlier, guys, we're a consulting company. So we do both in-house development and software consulting for the large corporates. So if I am sent in, for instance, as a part of a team in one of the banks as a consultant, I will be using whatever is being chosen by that team and the existing system. We have more freedom of choosing our languages and frameworks if we are managing from start to finish a project by ourselves. The languages at present we are mostly using Java, a lot of Java, JavaScript. We have a couple of guys who are also working in the machine learning space and big data. They're touching on a few things there. If any of you guys are thinking why Java, because I'm sure, I know a lot of guys coming from engineering backgrounds might be thinking, why not Python? Why not this? Why not that? I just mentioned to you guys, we service corporates, we service big business, and just the business is coming at this from a business perspective. Just like you as an engineer might say, listen, I have to design a large system for my company. What are the questions I'm going to ask? What are the costs of this thing? Does this thing I'm building or I'm working with, is it reliable? What's its track record? Businesses ask those same things about languages, which means many of the corporates favor Java because it has a track record of being being reliable, being secure, scales well. So because the need for Java skills in South Africa, especially from large corporates, is significant, we can add the most value by upskilling our devs first in, for instance, Java and JavaScript before we start digging into some of the other languages. And just as someone, Dudu had mentioned, I help Chris with a lot of the guys. I'm also one of the guys who went through the grad program. So I can guarantee you this is not something, it's not like you do 6 months and then you know all the things. It really is taking the time to specialize in these languages to serve those business needs, to have the insight how you design the system is a long engineering journey on its own. But I would say mainly the main programming languages we currently do would probably be Java and JavaScript.
Okay, thank you so much, Gina. I'm pretty sure everyone here would like to hear from people who had qualifications also in engineering. Ridwan and Mahau, you both have backgrounds in mechanical engineering. Suhail, yours is chemical, and Clinton, yours is civil. So may you please, guys, tell us why you considered a career in software development. We'll start with you, Ridwan.
So for me, the equation, it never really occurred to me to pursue a career in software development. I always wanted to be a mechanical engineer, and I even pursued a master's and achieved a master's in mechanical engineering. But things out there might not necessarily meet up to your expectations. So you might pursue a certain career and think you may end up somewhere. But because of the employment situation in our country, you often end up doing other things. So anyway, after finishing my master's, I was looking for a job in mechanical engineering and struggling. But eventually I decided to change tack. And actually my brother Ashraf, who's also on this panel, he applied at Psybergate and he got in, and I decided to why don't I try as well. And I went through the whole assessment process and chatted to Chris and basically made the decision to become a software developer. And ever since then, I've been quite happy. This career actually gives me quite a lot of satisfaction.
Thank you, Ridwan. Suhail, may you please tell us why you chose this career path, considering that you come from chemical engineering?
Yeah, sure. So I did study chemical engineering, like most brown boys, we had to go into medicine or engineering, something along those lines. But I always had an interest in gaming and games development. I just chose the safer option, I guess, when I wanted to study something. But then, yeah, after working as a consultant for a while, as a management consultant, I realized that this isn't the life I want to live, I wasn't enjoying waking up on Mondays. And yeah, so I decided, let's do a reset. And in fact, I was playing a game called Dungeons and Dragons, if anyone has heard of that. And one of my friends, like while we were playing, he was a Java developer, and he quickly was playing like this weird character who insulted everyone. And in like 5 minutes, he went away and came back and managed to make a random insult generator that could just, throw out insults while we were going. And it was something so simple, but I just love the fact that he wanted to do something. And regardless of its complexity, he could just go, take a step back and do it. He set his mind to something and he could see it to fruition. And yeah, I just found that really impressive, and I wanted to do that as well. And also the money's really good, so there's that.
Thank you, Suhail. Mahau and then Clinton, please share with us why you guys chose this career path.
Hi, everyone. For me, I never thought I would end up as a developer. But at first, I thought that I was going to most likely end up being in energy engineering, because I was I was more passionate about thermodynamics back in varsity. So the thing is, my girlfriend back then, she was doing computer science, and this other day I was doing my project and she was coding. They were coding a game, a snake game. And then I just saw the coding and everything. I just stopped doing everything and just looked at her coding. And I asked her, what is this? And she explained everything. And I was just like, oh my God, this is so cool. You see, and after that, I just took it as a hobby on the side, just started coding on my own, And then after my projects, I had enough time to just code every day. And until I saw an opportunity to apply, I was like, okay, let me start applying if maybe I can wing it. And then I applied for software graduate programs and I got the one for Psybergate, and I started doing the assessments, and I actually enjoyed them. So it was more of a hobby for me at first, but I actually realized I actually love doing this thing, and I actually want to do it, do coding as a living, like every day. So what I actually love about it is that introduces a different thinking paradigm. You learn to think more critically and logically instead of always relying on like equations as an engineer and all that. So yeah, for me it's really fun, honestly.
Thank you, Mahal.
Yep.
Clinton?
Right. I have similar stories, as opposed to Mal. So I've always had an interest in programming. I started learning how to program on my own, like in high school, in a simple language called BASIC. But at the time, my interest had a much bigger interest in, well, or rather, I wanted to study civil engineering at the time, and so that is what I did. And while I did enjoy studying civil engineering at WITS, it was good, right? I went through the whole degree, and then after that, I worked for 6 months in construction with WBHO. But then what I found was that I kind of always had an excuse to program, like when I was studying, I would always apply all the say the numerical methods in engineering. I'd always try to write some program to automate the whole process, and things like that. And even when I was at WBHO, my position at the time required me to gather lots of data and then process it and gather it into a report so that the management team can work with it and make decisions based off that. But there was a lot of data to process, and to do it manually in Excel would take hours. It would take literal hours just to do that. So I just found a quick excuse to use Visual Basic in Excel to automate the whole process, to just gather all this data for me. And while doing that, I just sort of realized that this is actually a much bigger passion for me, programming, and it has always been like that. And so I just decided that I should pursue it more strongly. And so that's what I did. With me in particular, I just, to sort of prepare myself for this unfamiliar industry, I tried to take some online courses involving like introductory computer science courses on programming and things like that. And then so I applied to lots of places for like internship positions, like with Psybergate, and then that's how I ended up here. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Clinton. How big is the learning curve in the grad program coming from those backgrounds that were not even code focused? How would you mind sharing with us?
To be honest, it is kind of steep because for me personally, in varsity, I didn't really do that much coding. The only coding I did was more numerical than like how we're doing it here at Cybergate. So you just have to believe in yourself most of the time and make sure that you can deliver, believe that you can deliver, and just sit down and code and read and just keep repeating the whole process and just realize that it's gonna take time, that you won't get good at it in the first 6 months or 6 years or something. You're gonna have to keep on learning. There's so much to learn. That's what I appreciate about it. There's so much to learn, and every day, whenever I'm in the mentoring class, I keep learning new things, and it's quite fun. Yeah.
Okay. Ridwan, may you please tell us how you would say the code you are writing now is different from the kind of code that you were writing while you were studying engineering?
Could you please give a bit more context on that? Different how?
So would you say that because we know that you have a mechanical engineering background, would you say that the kind of the kind of coding that you were exposed to then?
That I wrote during my degree.
Yes.
Yeah, it's quite different. So I think that you need to make a distinction between programming and software development. So software development uses programming. You do programming while you're doing software development, but it's also much more than that, because you have to create a system. You're basically creating a system of programs that are basically doing work. When you're doing programming as an engineer, it's usually just to solve a very specific problem. Usually you just write a script to do some work and that's it. When you're writing a business system, you're writing code that is basically persistent. It's a system that's going to continue, hopefully, for years and years. So the thinking required is quite different.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much for sharing this with us. Ashraf, I'm pretty sure you may be asking, we may be having a few guys asking if this is real engineering. What would you say to them? Is this real engineering? Because I mean, you guys are now in Java development, in software development. Say that this is real engineering. Do you guys really do engineering?
Yeah, so like Ridwan mentioned, it's software development is you're actually designing systems. And when I graduated from university, I was under the misconception that software development really isn't an engineering field, right? I felt it's a tool that engineers use, like how Ridwan described, you know, to perform tasks, to make things easier for them. But since actually working in the field, I've seen myself doing more engineering in terms of design and analysis and feedback cycles of the design process, more so than I did in my undergraduate degree.
Okay, thank you so much. Petule, now going to VAC. I know that you have an engineering background, you have an electrical engineering background, and you were part of our VAC program before you actually became a graduate. So may you please tell us what you guys did during the vacation program, and how would you say that you added value at Psybergate during this program?
Okay, so the structure of that work when I did it was we basically learned Java, the whole program. And how this takes place is Chris actually sits with us, right? And then we actually go through the language, not as in depth as you would in the grad program, but you learn it through experiencing the language. And what I mean by experiencing the language is you actually work with the language, but in working with the language, you actually have to ask certain questions. You know what I'm saying? So it's not just about writing code that achieves a certain objective. It's also writing code knowing fully well why the code behaves the way it does and what makes it behave the way it does. So it wasn't just learning Java, because you can just take a course in learning Java, but it was more focused to understanding the language and why it's structured the way it is, and yeah, and just learning the language as such. So how I would say I added value during back work, I mean, in what sense do you mean value? I guess I should ask.
Do you think you did anything that benefited you as an individual and also could have benefited Cybergate in any way during the program?
Well, given that my knowledge in Java wasn't actually, it was zero when I came in, I doubt that I added value, but I could say that I benefited as an individual in that your thinking changes, you know, when you don't just approach a language with the sense that it's just a tool to achieve an objective. But when you start asking questions, it also translates to everything else that you do. You know what I mean? So you're not just questioning the programming language, you start questioning everything else that you could possibly use as a tool. That how could you maybe use it better? Because I mean, it's one thing to use a language to write a program, but it's another thing to know how to optimize writing of said program. So yeah, I think as an individual, I benefited in the sense that my way of thinking changed.
Okay.
Right. So
Thank
it's
you
not
so
just
much.
about approaching a language blindly, but it's also about trying to understand what capabilities you could have if you understand it more.
Okay. Thank you so much, Petule. I know that Suhaili also was part of the vacation program. Would you say that the VEC work at Cybergate is different from any other vacation program that you've been part of? How different would you say it was?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can't really compare to other VAC work in software, because unfortunately the only other VAC work I did was chemical engineering related. But conceptually, I guess I could try to answer this. Um, you know, Chris is the type of guy who's, he's not like our lecturers who, I mean, I'm not taking anything away from our lecturers, but, they would generally just go over topics and give you like this brief overview and let you go home and like continue learning it or study it in depth. The one thing that was really, really great in this VAC work, coming from a background where I had absolutely no coding experience, we would start discussing a topic in a very broad manner and get the broader perspective about it. And then while we are in our lessons, so during the 8 to 1 or however long it goes, Chris is there actually coding examples for us to explain what he's just started talking to us about, and getting both sides where you have this broad idea-centric understanding of it, and then visually seeing someone code and implement the ideas that he just described to you. I think that's really invaluable. And I really wish that a lot of other lecturers and tutors would take this approach, because it's really, really good. The other important thing I learned is the answers are not necessarily that important. Asking the right question is. So once you know the right question, you can very easily, ask someone who's your superior, or in fact, just go to Google. It's so easy these days. But having the thought process or the mindset that leads you to ask the right questions is something that was drilled into us. And don't get me wrong, I still sort of struggle with that, but it's something I would definitely strive to get better at.
Okay. Thank you so much, Suhail. Ashraf, may you please tell us more about what generally happens during the VEC program and how people can actually apply for the program?
Yeah, so during the VAC work program, Chris would take you through a certain domain problem. He usually works with text as the domain, because one of the other things you need to know as a young professional is how to deal with text. So that's a neat domain to use for you guys to learn while doing the VAC work program. So that the VAC work program runs over 4 to 6 weeks, I believe, and it's usually at the end of June, July. I believe this year we are doing it. Gina, what are the dates?
This year we've confirmed for the 7th of July to the 31st of July. This year we're still doing it completely digitally this year, and we aren't quite comfortable yet asking guys you know, to feel they have to come together in a larger group in a physical space just yet. We ran last year actually both our VAC works that we ran last July and August was fully digitally. And Suhail was a part of the digital VAC work. He can tell you just because it's digital doesn't mean it's not incredibly intensively engaging. I've actually, again, he can probably tell you guys better from a participant point of view what that was like. So we, except for the June, July, we often also do December. Because of COVID last year, we didn't do December, but we did do July and August. And as I mentioned, this year, 7th of July to 31st of July. Applications are open, and we will share information for that after the session is over. Applications for that will be closing 10th of June, just because we need to process. You guys can imagine we've got multiple universities, and a lot of guys aren't doing VAC work during, or at least they weren't doing it during lockdown, or they had very limited capacity, how they could facilitate students. So we ask that you guys, if you are applying, please apply soon. The kinds of things we need from you guys, if you are applying, you don't need the CV is not so important, but your academic results and your matric certificate weighs very much. You can imagine if I've got 700 people applying and 30 spots in a given time space, if one guy gave me his documents and the other guy didn't, the person who gave me their documents stand out a lot more. You may get a coding assessment sent to you. It's not make it or break it if you send it, but it works greatly in your favor if you take the time to complete the coding assessment. Again, if I got two guys who look almost identical on paper, but one guy did the assessment, that's more for us to work with when we're processing them. So that's what more of the framing of what's happening on the VAC work side.
Okay, thank you so much, Gina and Ashraf. I'm pretty sure some of the people are also have questions on the grad program. So all of you guys did the grad program. However, I'd like to ask Lihlohonolo and Suhail, how is it generally structured? Because I know that you guys are currently in the grad program. So may you please tell us how it is structured? Suhail?
Yeah, sure. So since the beginning, it's been pretty much the same. So we started in about January, and for most days, Mondays to Fridays, we have classes with Chris from about 8 o'clock, 8:30 till about 1 o'clock. We'll get a break in between if we're lucky, if Chris decides to be so kind to us. I'm just kidding. He's gotten a lot better with that, thanks to Gina. And yeah, so we generally work with him with a lesson.
Are you still there?
Hi, sorry, I think I just got cut off. I got some notification from Teams. Yeah, sorry, I was saying, so from 8 o'clock till about 1:30, we're with Chris, where he's teaching us concepts and going through examples, and we ask him questions. Then about towards the end of his lessons, we reach the homework phase. So Chris will give us a brief expectation, or a brief summary of his expectation from us, so what we kind of need to do. And then pretty much from 1:30 till 5 is now students' time. So how you decide to spend this is, I guess, can vary per year and per group. There are class leaders and group leaders who come together and decide how to spend this time productively. So I'll just give an example for what we do is basically from 1:30 when the class ends, people take a break and then they work on their own, basically on the homework. That happens till about 2:30, 3 o'clock. And then we meet together as a class. So 17 of us jump on a meeting, pretty much just like this. One guy will go up and present. And that's, it's less about him presenting perfectly and us like judging him based on it, but more about us just getting used to showing other people our code and coding live. I think live coding is definitely something you get more and more used to the more often you do it. And yeah, so that usually happens for about an hour and a half, and then we take our break again. And then usually, so the 17 of us are split into groups which are about 4, and 5, I believe. And those group leaders then decide if they want to meet with their groups later on. So they usually have a half-an-hour meeting with the rest of the team, and they catch up to see who's behind on homework and where they can help. And that's the general thing of what we do Monday to Friday. And Ashraf and Gina, have been really, really amazing in terms of helping us whenever they can. So there are numerous amounts of times where Ashraf and Gina literally gave up some of their weekends to help us out just because we struggled with a topic or two. So it is pretty fluid. But yeah, the Monday to Friday, 8 till 1:30 is usually the full-on class learning time.
Okay, thank you so much, Suhail. Lihlohonolo, could you please describe the experience for us? Because I can see Suhail has already covered the general structure of the grad program. May you please share with us your experience?
Yeah, Suhail has laid down most of the things, but on my side, personally, I think it has been great. It's been amazing, and I like the teaching. The teaching most of the time is really it's good, honestly. The way Chris teaches us how to be developers is a proper way. I think everyone should just adapt the teaching strategy that he's using, because the way he's teaching us, his model is that, say for instance, you have a black box. You put in something, you get something out. So when you explain a black box to someone, that's not a good way of teaching them. He uses that model. You don't teach them what's happening you don't tell them how the black box works. What you do is you build it with them. You build your own model of the black box. That's the kind of strategy that he uses. So yeah, it has brought forth how you learn to appreciate the first principles of how all these things are built. The architecture, because he tells us that you need to understand the architecture, because this is going to be your tool every day when you're working. Understand how it's built, learn the limitations, learn the disadvantages and the advantages of it, and learn how to apply it properly. So I think so far, yeah, we are happy, and yeah.
Thank you so much. That sounds interesting. At Clinton, Petule, Ridwan, and Ashraf, you guys have been out on a real project for a while now. What impact do you feel the mentoring had on your real project? We'll start with Ashraf and Ridwan because they'll have to leave us in a few minutes, and then we'll follow up with Petule and Clinton. Ashraf?
Yeah, so like Gina mentioned, a lot of the projects, the language that you deal with is based on what the client requires. And I had the opportunity of working on a non-Java project. So most of our mentoring is done in the Java language. And my first big project out of the mentoring was in JavaScript. And I felt that despite not having done as much programming in JavaScript, the core principles that I was taught in the mentoring still applied. So a lot of what we learn is agnostic of language. It doesn't matter which language you're programming in. The concepts and the thinking patterns still apply regardless of which language it is.
Thank you, Ashraf. Ridwan, may you please share with us? What impact do you feel the mentoring had on your real projects?
I believe he had to step away for a while, so he's not here currently.
Okay. Petule, and may you please share with us?
All right. So I've had, I don't know if it's fortune, but I'm currently working in a Java environment, so it's not too much of a deviation from what I gained from mentoring. But one thing I can say that mentoring actually gave me is the ability to be able to analyze and not criticize in the manner, but actually question some design decisions. Because when you start coding, you must also think about who's going to use this code. You must also think about what's going to happen in 10 years' time when someone else is on the system. So it's not just about the objective right now, it's also about the long term, what may I call this? The long term repercussions of certain design decisions, you see, which is something that I've come into, what's the word I'm looking for here? But something that I've come across so many times when just working on the system is that you can start to understand that whatever work that you are doing is not just gonna, because yes, at the same time, you're trying to get your work done, but also bring this mentality that it's not just about doing it now, but also remember, is it gonna be maintainable in, like, let's just say 5 years time? Or if you had to leave that system as it was at the time, can someone else coming onto the project actually gain the momentum to start working quickly without really having to, redesign or something like that? So it actually brings that design paradigm with it, and that whatever work you do, just always consider the design, or else then the impacts are, yeah, I'm losing words here, but yeah, the impacts are greater if you don't consider the design in the beginning. So yeah.
Thank you, Petule. Clinton, may you please share with us the impact that the mentoring session actually had on your real projects?
Right. Massive impact, right? I think Ashraf and Petula mentioned very good points about how it assists you when you actually work on a real project. So that point that Ashraf made about how you learn a lot of language agnostic concepts and techniques that will apply no matter where you are, and in particular about when you go and join a new project, typically you'll be expected to learn how to use a system that's already there, right? So you have to join in, learn what their system is, how it works, and then you can start providing value into it. What the grad program helped me in that regard is something that hasn't been mentioned yet, but confidence. After learning everything through the grad program, right, you gain the confidence in your own ability, right? You gain the confidence in how you learn how to understand a system, how you question things so that how to analyze a system so that you arrive at the right questions to ask so that you can start to understand the system better. And in that sense, it has been absolutely helpful, right? So I joined the client and start learning how their system works. And then you start to basically, the onboarding process is a lot quicker. It's very quick if you've gone through this grad program and you've got the tools available to help you start providing value. So yeah, so in that sense, it has been absolutely massive. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Clinton. A lot of you guys also asked a few questions on the YDP, which is the Young Developers Program. And Chris, may you please tell us about the YDP and the YDP that we actually started at Psybergate.
Okay, Dudu. Yeah, so this is a fairly new program, guys. So we're still experimenting with this. The YDP stands for Young Developers Program. In principle, it's similar to our grad program. In our grad program, we only take on people once a year. We typically start last week of Jan, and you know, given the time frames, you know, your average graduate qualifies in December, so that's the natural flow. The grad program is also intended to really feed Cybergate's permanent staff in a consulting capacity. So, you know, every graduate through the grad program is targeted for, you know, a final permanent employment at Cybergate. Whereas YDP has really been a response to the industry. A number of our clients have asked us, given what they're seeing, you know, they're seeing our young people, they're seeing their skills, and a number of our clients have asked us to consider you know, a program where they can also hire young people that we've mentored. So that this is the primary goal of the Young Development Program, is to get you into the Cybergate structures for probably 2.5 years, and then open the possibility of client employment as well. So you know, you'll be part of Cybergate for a certain period of time, and our clients will then have options to consider taking you permanently on board within their structure. So this way, we're quite excited about this addition. Or you know, we still, as I said, still quite new. We got the next version coming up in July. But the reason we're excited is that, as I think someone mentioned earlier, unemployment in this country is really a problem. So the more opportunities we get to maybe make an impact, and I think YDP has certainly got that possibility, is exciting for us to be part of.
Would you recommend the YDP program for engineers?
Listen, it depends on where people are. So, you know, most engineers should really qualify for our graduate program, but it's really hard to say. I mean, you know, as I said, because YDP is still new, we're finding our feet. Financially, YDP is a difficult model, but you know, we committed to making it work. We've done some experimentation. We've put a few people through it, and we're hoping to get it to a much better level in the next 1 or 2 iterations. Some of it's timing. So if someone's struggling, they're looking for work and they can't find work, well, then, you know, it's pointless waiting until next year. You may as well try and apply for the next program, which starts in July. But I would say most most engineers, based on where you are, should really, you know, apply to our grad program. But there's no harm done. You can apply to both, and let's see where that takes us.
Okay, so if let's take for instance, a student is mostly done with his qualification, but then they have 1 or 2 subjects left. Can they apply for the YDP program or the grad program at Psybergate?
Yes, they most certainly can. So that's actually a good you know, thing that I've sort of discovered over the years, is that many students are wasting years because they might have 1 or 2 things that they're repeating. If those things, that whatever modules or courses you're repeating, if it's not that onerous on your time, and you know, there's a level of flexibility, then we might be able to consider you. We've certainly taken on a number of students, even in our grad program, that haven't completed their degrees. But, you know, it doesn't mean we will. It all depends on how the coursework that you've got still left over, how it will impact your time. And if it's significant impact on your time, then we might not be able to do it. But if it's minimal impact, then it's certainly an option.
Okay, thank you so much, Chris. We've covered most of the questions that everyone actually sent through. That was our last question for the day. And for now, may you guys please, our panelists, may you please share a bit of advice for the engineers who are interested in software development. Chris, I'll save you for last. We'll start with, I know that a few of our panelists actually left us. Suhail, Ridwan, and Ashraf excused us for a moment. So we'll start with Clinton. May you please give engineers who are interested in software development a piece of advice?
Sure. The one main advice I would offer is if you want to get into software development or programming, a lot of the places, including Cybergate, sort of will test your ability to write code at a basic level, right? You just need to be able to at least know how to write code. It doesn't have to be great, you just need to know how to do it. So in that respect, you should just practice lots and lots of coding. Being able to just write code to solve whatever problem you're having, you should do that as much as you can, because going through that process of writing code will mean that you will ask a lot of basic programming questions. You know, how do I structure my if statements? You know, how should I structure my conditionals? What sort of data structure do I need to use to group my information here? You know, when should I declare my variable? All these nuanced questions you'll be able to sort of start to naturally get a feel of when to use it and when not to, but only if you write lots and lots of code. So that's the biggest advice I will get. There are lots of ways you can practice how to code. There are a lot of online platforms to help you with this. The sites like LeetCode and Code Wars and sites like that. So that gives you the chance to actually write lots and lots of code. So that's the biggest advice I have.
Thank you so much, Clinton. Petula, may you please share your advice with us?
So I think Clinton basically covered most of it, but one thing I can say is that if you are passionate in software, then just go for it. There are no downsides. If I can say this, I mean, yeah, just go for it. Honestly, it's not the worst idea in the world, especially as an engineer. You already have the thinking patterns, you already have the acuity for it. So if software is your thing, just go for it.
Okay, thank you so much, Petule. Lisa Honolo, may you please share your advice with the engineers?
My advice is that if you're gonna start learning to code, do not rely a lot on reading. Most of us get distracted and we tend to read a lot. With coding, don't read a lot. Just open your IDE and just code. Keep on coding and learn to use the IDE effectively and understand the language more on your own first before you just go on Google and just searching. And another thing is that with coding, you need to learn to think more logically than you do now in varsity. So my advice is that go through like puzzles, solve puzzles, solve logical problems. Then they will help you to think, because with programming, it's not really about just taking an equation and plugging in and getting the values. You have to learn to make something make sense logically. So learn to solve puzzles and just solve a lot of them and code a lot. Don't rely a lot on Google. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Lihlahonolo. Gina, may you please share a bit of advice with us?
So my advice would be not just to you guys as engineers. What I've seen from many guys coming to us interested in software dev, including people who did computer science as their background, they often come assuming they know more than they do. They come with a mindset like, oh, I already know language X. Oh, I already know how to do this. I already know how to do that. And they often underestimate. They often underestimate just how much there is to learn and how much there is to grow. So I would encourage you guys, again, if you're coming like from an engineering background, like our engineers say, don't look at programming as, oh, this is just a tool. Or it's almost to look down at it as to say, this is a lesser thing. They are really big, meaty design principles and concepts to work through that you could really specialize in this for a lifetime. and still have more to learn. I had guys, unfortunately, the candidate I have in mind, he did come from engineering background, who, when he was applying to us, his wording was this. He's like, you know what, I'm looking into software dev, but I'm not sure because I'm afraid I'm going to know everything there is to know about software dev in 1 year. And I remember, this is me after, you know, a few years in the industry, where the deeper I've gone to this, the more I've seen what I don't know and how much there is to learn and to engage me, that I thought, wow, what an underestimation there is here for new growth and potential. And if you're coming to this, if you are approaching software development as, I really don't know as much as I think I know, and there's more to learn. If you're coming with that mindset, that growth mindset will only do you well. Because then you are going to do, for instance, say, okay, where can I find the kinds of tools that Clinton mentioned that I can challenge my thinking? You are going to, like Law said, okay, well, I need to practice more of my logical thinking. What would be good problems to tackle, or how would I approach designing the following thing if I had this problem? And it's also going to drive you to say, let me ask meaningful questions. I see one or two guys have asked in the chat, can I learn a language on your own? Certain things you can. Again, the question you might not realize right now is how deep and how meaningful is your learning right now? Because many guys who have come to us, again, not just engineers, who thought they knew, started learning with us and said, wait a minute, the quality of my self-learning has changed because my thinking patterns of the kind of questions I ask has grown and deepened. So I'm not just asking, how do I do foo in my language of choice? I'm asking more meaningful questions with self-exploration, so that I'm in the same project currently that Ashraf is on. As he mentioned, Java wasn't our main language, but because the principles and the choices of how you approach these projects are so agnostic, when we came to this these new technologies, it helped drive the questions to say, okay, what do we know? What do we have to ask? Where do we have to go? That we got up and going much faster. So that's what I would say is, come with a growth mindset, be open to feedback, be open to learning, and give this if you're going to consider this, give this the time, the respect, and the energy required. Don't assume that it's just going to be a walkover. You guys have heard from our engineers, this is real. There is real design and real work into mastering software engineering. So that's what I would say.
Thank you so much. I see we have Ridwan and Ashraf back. Ashraf and Ridwan, may you please share with the students some piece of advice that may you please give the students a piece of advice. Okay.
So from my side, so what kind of advice?
So may you please, if someone wants to actually pursue the path of software development from engineering, what advice would you give them?
So the advice I would give is, it would really help if you have a good mentor. I think that's the advice that I would give, because the software development space is very complex. There's a lot of technologies, there's a lot of jargon, there's a lot of things you have to do, things you have to think about, and you need a strong foundation in order to be a good software developer. So often, I mean, if you start on your own, it's possible that you can become a good software developer, but I think that it would be very difficult without a good mentor. So my advice would be, find a good mentor.
Thank you so much. Ashraf, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, just tying in with what Ridwan and also what Gina said, my advice would be don't be afraid to ask questions. You're coming out of university, you're not expected to know everything. So now is the perfect time to ask all the dumb questions. Don't assume that you know something. It's actually easier to ask a question than you think. And you don't want to end up like 4 or 5 years down the line and now you feel you can't ask the questions anymore because you've progressed so far. And trust me, it gets worse if you just continue hiding what you don't know. You you could end up like 10 years down in your career and not have learned anything. So yeah, ask questions.
Thank you so much, Ashraf. Last but not least, Chris, would you please tell us how the graduate program is different from other graduate programs out there, and also share with us a piece of advice that we would like for the engineers to leave with.
So I guess I can comment on this. I mean, you know, the program, I mean, I designed this particular program a few years ago, and there was particular objectives I had. I mean, as I said, I've been in software many years. So especially in building this business, I've interviewed truckloads of developers. I mean, literally hundreds, if not, you know, possibly even over 1,000. I don't know, but certainly hundreds and hundreds of developers I've interviewed, and I've been often surprised by the lack of understanding of some fairly simple concepts and ideas, and simple things like just what is a list and a set and a map in software. These simple things that one would expect software devs to understand. It's not well, and sometimes if there is a little understanding, it's often superficial understanding. So and it took me a while to figure out, why is this the case? Well, to be honest, to this day, I still struggle to figure out why this is the case. But in any event, in trying to explore some of this, I started mentoring senior guys mostly over 10 years of experience, about 12 years ago. And to cut a long story short, I eventually decided to maybe focus on young people and try to shape thinking from the ground up, but not just technical thinking, because I mean, technical thinking is a big part of our focus, but even professional and career thinking. And that's the harder part, I think, sometimes, because, technical people take to technical things. So the program then was designed to then say, how do we make sure these fundamental principles, concepts are better understood, and that even goes as far as to say well understood, even though they're basic concepts fairly well, and we practice a lot with writing code, discussing principles, understanding this at a broader software level. Most of the application is in Java, but Java is the tool. I mean, Java is our core tool. But please note, 70% of what we do is concepts and principles, and so on. So I think that's where it's very different. It's fairly intense. Many of the graduates find the program fairly difficult in terms of the intensity, the newness. There's a lot of thinking involved. And so my sense is not a lot of programs out there do that. I guess another differentiator is that we've got, I'm the guy personally involved, and I'm not saying me particularly, but what most programs lack is the involvement of a senior with many years of experience. Most companies cannot afford to put their senior in a graduate program spending hours with youngsters every day. That is not a normal part of almost any program. I know of no program like that out there. So I think the focus on strong principles of software foundations and the presence of a senior person who's intimately involved in this journey is probably the big differentiators, I guess. In terms of advice, well, I mean, I think this is a hard one. I mean, I've just been fairly impressed just by the panelists. These are my young people, and it's just wonderful to hear them talking. I don't always hear them talk like this, so this is fantastic. And I'm hearing them saying things that I'm hearing for the first time, and hearing backgrounds is really I'm learning so much about just some of my own people here. So that's fantastic, right? But in terms of advice, well, I guess the first thing would be to explore whether you truly wanted to be a software dev. If you were studying engineering right now, because your engineering career has got many possible outcomes for you in terms of career direction. You must want to be a programmer, and so if you're a little unsure, even if you're sure, VAC work apply for a VAC work program. I'm happy that you use our program to explore your passion for software. That's certainly the goal of what we want to achieve, is to expose a little more and maybe give you a bit of a better insight to software. So that's probably the first thing, is do you really want to go into software? Okay, it is an interesting career, it is an exciting career, but then if you studied any form of engineering, you might want the engineering side to be more your focus. We certainly don't want you to be, joining our company unless you truly know you want to program for a living. So I think that's probably my advice. Make sure you want to do this and explore it. It's certainly it's vastly diverse. I guess I dare say it's fairly complex, and you almost never master the skills involved. It's a journey, a lifelong journey of just learning and growth. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Chris. I think we've come to the end of our discussion for today. We can connect some of you guys to the panelists that we have, should you need any further guidance or help. We will also follow up with a playback of the event and send out additional resources. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll hand over to Marielle.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dudu. Wow, what an incredibly informative session. I'd just like to say thank you to all our panelists for sharing your insights and all of your experiences with us. And also thank you to the participants for joining us. I hope all of your questions were answered and that your urge to go into this field is greater than it was before.